We have seen with a morose regularity the increase in family annihilations. But it's very rare for the perpetrator to be a teenager. Even more so when there doesn't seem to be a clear motive or triggering event. In this case, a seemingly loving family is blown apart when a 16-year-old boy decides that things need to change at any cost. In one of the first mass murders of the bollocking pandemic, we're going to Utah, and this is the case of Colin Jeffrey CJ Haynie, and this is Murder of Crows. I think most people would agree that the fallout from some incident with a bat in Wuhan, China, in turn leading to a small incident the world knows as the COVID-19 pandemic, was pretty darned shitty. Most countries went into lockdown, and the incidence of domestic incidents, especially those involving violence, soared as people were forced to stay under each other's feet. Now, there is never an excuse for violence, but it is easy to understand that forcing people together with little to no opportunity to create space to breathe in peace and quiet is a recipe for disaster. The incident we will look at today happened in the early phase of the pandemic. And while the pandemic may have been a factor in what played out, it seems far more likely that several minor issues led to a teenager's true emerging personality overriding any moral concerns, allowing him to act with impunity. It is the perpetrator's young age that is particularly jarring in this case. But let's just look at what happened and see if we can make any sense whatsoever of the carnage that were the first murders in Grantsville, Utah, in around 20 years. Grantsville, Utah is a small city by any measure or criteria, but it had grown in the previous 30 years to have a population of over 12,000 by the year 2020. This was largely due to its proximity to Salt Lake City, making it ideal for commuters into the big city that hankered after the life offered by a smaller community. The cheaper way of life. Nearby Utah motorsports circuit and a Walmart distribution center offering employment are all factors that were a draw to Grantsville for many. But its more peaceful way of life was always a big selling point. But in January of 2020, the peace was shattered seismically, with a family tragedy that turned life in Grantsville upside down. On January the 17th of 2020, Colin Jeffrey, who understandably instead went by CJ, Haynie, was a perfectly normal high school student. But there was nothing perfectly normal about his actions that day. Having decided not to go to school, the kid prepared at around midday 2 guns for what he intended to do with the rest of his day. Then at about 1 p.m. he began his mission. His mother, Consuelo Alejandra Haynie, who went by Alex, arrived home from picking up her 12-year-old daughter, Milan. The two were shot as they entered the home. They were shot multiple times in their heads, necks, and upper bodies at point-blank range. This was just the first step in what CJ wanted to achieve. Then at around 2 p.m, his sister, 15-year-old Alexis Haynie, arrived home from school. CJ followed her and fired 5 shots into her head and chest. But despite the abhorrent nature of his actions, CJ was able to flick a switch and appear quite normal, because at some time between 3 and 5 p.m, 2 neighbours came by as CJ waited for his remaining family members to return home. And one of these visiting neighbours was his sister's piano teacher, who was worried when they didn't attend lessons that day. Both neighbours who'd called at the house said that CJ appeared normal, which is perhaps one of the most chilling aspects of the day. Even fraternal closeness wasn't enough to derail CJ from his deadly mission. And when 14-year-old Matthew Haynie returned home from a birthday party, a brother with whom CJ was particularly close, CJ shot the 14-year-old once in the head at point-blank range. Now there was only one more thing left to be done. His father, Colin Haynie, arrived home to a dark house and thought that his family must not be at home. But then he turned and saw CJ standing in the dark, raising a gun. And thinking quickly, the older man rushed him. CJ fired multiple rounds, but only one hit his father, and that hit was in the leg. A struggle ensued for about an hour as the father tried to defuse the situation and tried to get the gun away from his son. CJ hit his father in the head with the gun, and blood began rushing down the older man's face. At about 7 p.m, a neighbour arrived at the home to return some keys, and he found Colin and CJ almost knotted together. This neighbour thought that Colin Haynie was wearing a mask, but soon learned rather that his face was covered in blood. They all agreed to go to the hospital, where Colin Haynie was treated and his son was taken into police custody. The older man reportedly told police in an interview that CJ had told him his mother and siblings were dead, and his intention was to kill everyone in the home except for himself. By this point, the only remaining members of the family were CJ, his father Colin, and his 24-year-old brother Danny, who had moved out to attend university sometime prior to the murders. 4 people were dead and another was seriously injured. And the killer was a member of the family, and indeed was just 16 years old.
Her car, and they were heading towards Mountain West Medical Center. Just before the call to dispatch, the defendant told the reporting party that he had just killed his family. The reporting party then called 911, and while the reporting party was on the phone with dispatch, the defendant stated he had killed his mother first at about 1 p.m., and then stated that he killed the others as they returned home. Grantsville police entered the home and found the bodies of the defendant's mother and his 3 younger siblings. Based on witness interviews, the defendant's mother picked up defendant's 12-year-old sister Malin from school at about 1 p.m. The defendant murdered his mother and Malin not long after they returned home by firing multiple rounds from a handgun into their heads, necks, and upper bodies. At approximately 2 p.m., the 15-year-old sister Alexa came home from school. Sometime between her arrival and 5 p.m., the defendant murdered Alexis. She died from multiple gunshot wounds to her head and upper body. Based on witness interviews, at 5:17, the 14-year-old brother Matthew returned home, and Matthew died of a single gunshot wound to the head. Defendant's father was interviewed by law enforcement. He said that he arrived at the family home at around 6:15. The defendant shot him in the leg as he entered the home. A struggle ensued, and the father was hit in the head with an unknown object and had some severe lacerations to his head. The defendant's father was able to get the handgun away from him. He said that the defendant told him that his mother and other siblings were dead and that his intention was to kill everyone in the home except himself. Pursuant to Utah Code Section 78A 6-701, the district court has exclusive and original jurisdiction over this matter because CJ is 16 years of age or older and charged with aggravated murder. Therefore, this case has been filed in the 3rd District Court or adult court rather than in the juvenile court. Because of his age, the maximum penalty for aggravated murder is life in prison without parole. This investigation is ongoing. The Grantsville Police Department is still gathering evidence, some additional evidence, and processing the evidence that's already gathered. We acknowledge the great work and the tireless effort of the Grantsville Police Department. We also thank the other agencies in Tooele County for their assistance and their spirit of cooperation that exists between our various agencies in this county. With that said, do you have any questions? Yes.
I know you don't have to prove it in court. I think everybody wants to know why. What's the motive here?
We have no answer at this point as to what his motive or mental state was. At this point, he has declined to speak to the police. Maybe sometime in the future this will come forward, but at this point we don't know.
So have you done a toxicology test? Was he on something?
That's something I can't comment on.
So the death penalty is not an option because of his age?
Yes. If you're a minor, death penalty is not an option.
Just to clarify, who called 911 and in what position was he and his father at the time of the arrest?
The reporting party was a neighbor that came over. Just frankly, she was over there to return some keys. And that was it.
Why were they both at the hospital? Was he at that point cooperating and trying to save his father once they went to the hospital?
They were both at the hospital because when the reporting party came to the home, the father asked or stated that he'd been shot and that he needed to go to the hospital, and that reporting party and her husband immediately got them in the car and started driving them to the hospital. So that's why both of them were there in the car. At the time, the reporting party had no idea what was happening.
But was he restrained, or at that point was he complicit, or was he?
No, there's no restraining. This is a neighbor and her husband who were taking her to.
The father didn't have to restrain his son. I mean, after he shot his dad said, "Let's go to the hospital," or did he go from here to here? I guess everyone wants to know what was his mindset?
Well, he was obviously compliant because he got in the car and went voluntarily to the hospital.
Who drove to the hospital?
The reporting party and her husband.
Like a neighbor?
A neighbor.
So have you spoken to the family since announcing the charges?
No.
Why not?
They have not wanted to have contact with us at this point. So at some point, I assume they will, but they've been keeping their privacy at this point. Obviously, I assume they're quite upset and trying to wrap their heads around this horrific event, but they haven't wanted to speak yet.
As far as motive goes, how do you figure that out? I mean, we don't have the answer, so what do you do?
I'm hoping that through the investigation, as time goes on, that a motive will surface. So, but at this point, there's a lot of evidence that's being gathered off of computers, cell phones, etc. Maybe there'll be some answers in those.
Yeah, we were over at the LDS church where the Haynie family funeral will be happening tomorrow. When Colin Haynie actually pulled up, he just wanted to stop and say thank you for the outpouring of love and support from his community, especially to those putting up all these yellow ribbons across the city. Take a listen to what he had to say.
It's been friends and family and the outreach of the community. I would just like to comment on an experience that we had yesterday. We were going to the cemetery to pick out plots, which is not a pleasant experience. But as we were going down the street, we saw these kids putting out these yellow ribbons. And so after we'd gone to the cemetery, we returned, and I asked the driver if he would just pull over so we could talk to a couple of them, because we're so appreciative of what they're doing. And it's that love and that outreach that strengthens us. And this isn't limited to my family. Many people are grieving, and we just want to let them know that we appreciate all of the support that we're getting. And we just appreciate all of that support and love.
Yeah, Colin says he's getting through this horrible time through his faith, his family, and the immense love and support from this community. Coming up tonight on Fox 13 News Live at 9, you're going to hear from some of the kids behind this Yellow Ribbon Project. For now, live in Grantsville, Sydney Glenn, Fox 13 News, Utah.
Time we're hearing from a Grantsville man following the tragic murders of his wife and 3 of his children 6 days ago. In a statement released by Colin Haynie's attorney, he expressed in part the family's profound appreciation for the support given by friends, extended community, law enforcement, and healthcare providers. The statement continues, saying Colin, quote, can hardly comprehend what has happened. Colin Haynie is recovering from a gunshot wound to his leg. His 16-year-old son, CJ, is facing 4 aggravated murder charges for allegedly shooting and killing his mother and 3 younger siblings and attempting to kill his father. Police say that CJ has not been talking and they don't know his motive, but according to court documents, he has confessed to these crimes.
Disturbing new details coming out late this afternoon about the family killed in Grantsville.
The teenager is now formally facing 10 charges, but not talking with investigators. Michael Locklear is live in Twilla with what's next for this case. Michael.
We still don't know the why here, the motive, either from the dad or his father. Here at the Tooele County Courthouse this afternoon, the county attorney told us that police are combing through data right now, trying to figure that out.
There's a lot of evidence that's being gathered off of computers, cell phones, etc. Maybe there'll be some answers in those.
The 16-year-old CJ Haynie is not talking with police, and the county attorney says relatives have not wanted to talk with prosecutors yet either. The teen is accused of shooting his parents and 3 brothers and sisters as they arrived home over the course of the afternoon.
That this happened over a 5-hour period, piece by piece by piece by piece. This wasn't a one, horrific act all occurring in 1 minute, I snapped. This is something that methodically happened over a 5-hour period.
The filing of 10 charges happened late this afternoon, the most serious being 4 counts of aggravated murder. The teen will appear in court for the first time here on Monday. He will be tried as an adult, but because of his age, the max penalty here is life in prison without parole, the death penalty off the table. Live in Tooele, Michael Locklear, 2 News.
All right, Michael. Funeral services are now set for the 4 members of the Haynie family killed last week. A viewing will start at 10 o'clock Friday morning over at the Grantsville Stake Center. That'll be followed by funeral services starting at noon. Interment will take place at the Grantsville City Cemetery.
And a Facebook fundraiser set up for the Haynie family over the weekend has nearly reached its $100,000 goal. As of right now, more than 2,200 people have donated more than $98,000 for funeral and medical expenses.
When things moved to trial, CJ's defense attorney, Richard Van Wagener, was struck by the fact that the young man had refused to speak with police during initial questioning without an attorney present. And this was remarkable presence of mind for a young man who had never been faced with police action before. But it seems that he got advice from what was, under the circumstances, an unlikely source. This advice came from CJ's father, Colin, and was relayed to the boy as they were driving to the hospital. The attorney went on to say, under these horrific circumstances, he was protecting his son. Colin Jeffrey, CJ Haynie, was charged with 4 counts of aggravated murder, 1 count of attempted murder, and 5 counts of felony discharge of a firearm. He was charged as an adult. He pleaded guilty to the charges. During his initial appearance in court, Haynie was ordered to stay in a juvenile detention facility with bail set at $4 million. He was also issued a public defender. As he was a juvenile, Haynie could not be sentenced to death. His defense attorney asked that CJ receive concurrent sentences, giving him a chance to one day be released from prison. Did he deserve that chance? They say that kids are still developing until the age of 25. But the scale and intent of his crimes rather puts lack of development into a kind of stark perspective. But the attorney was, of course, trying to paint his client in the best light, with him saying that while CJ initially blamed his father for the crimes and was immature, socially awkward and internalized, he had since taken responsibility and made a near miraculous transformation to better understand and manage his emotions, and wouldn't pose a threat if released. And he made a point of noting that CJ had earned his high school diploma while incarcerated. Like, yeah, that proves you're not a homicidal maniac. The fact that you can do tests and shit. Anywho, Toole County Attorney Scott Broadhead said that it was baffling that someone could conclude that Haynie wasn't or wouldn't be a threat. Broadhead went on to say that Haynie had hatched a plan to systematically kill each of his family members, burn down their house, and flee with a clean slate. Broadhead also said that Haynie's only explanation for the murders was that CJ was angry at his father because of conflicts over his school and church attendance, and also being restricted from hanging out with friends or playing video games. Arguments that teenagers and parents have all the time. Broadhead said that Haynie's only explanation for the murders was this anger at his father. Quite why that meant that he then killed everybody who lived in the home, I couldn't tell you. But that's what he chose to do, because he couldn't play Xbox or some shit. Anyway, Broadhead said the killings can't be explained away by anxiety and immaturity. Just about every 16-year-old in the history of the world has at some point decided not to kill their parents. with him adding that CJ killed his mother and siblings because he feared the family would turn on him if he only killed his father, Colin Haynie. Do you think, CJ? Do you think people wouldn't be overly keen on that idea? At the sentencing, CJ's older brother Danny made a statement. He told the court that the killings had traumatized him, playing on the innate fear that somehow one's entire family will be taken from them without notice or reason. And he went on to say that for him, the most frustrating part of all this was that it could have been prevented, with him recalling a conversation with his mother around the time of Thanksgiving, where she mentioned that CJ was having a rough transition from home school to public school, and had said some dark things that made them consider getting him mental health treatment. Danny Haynie said that CJ's father didn't allow this to happen, with the father being worried that CJ might say something that would get him into trouble. Danny said, "The irony now is that Jeffrey is still ending up in jail and the rest of my family is dead. And for what?" On July the 19th, 2022, Haynie pleaded guilty to the shootings. And on July the 12th, 2023, he was sentenced to 5 sentences of 25 years to life, with 4 of them to be served consecutively, totaling up to 100 years in prison. He was also sentenced to 25 years to life for the attempted murder count, but this would run concurrently.
Sentencing day for a teenager who shot and killed his own mom and 3 of his siblings in a horrific crime. The judge gave CJ, or Colin Jeffrey Haynie, the maximum sentence.
News specialist Dan Rascone was in the courtroom. He joins us now live. So, Dan, how long will he be spending in prison?
CJ Haynie was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison for all 5 counts, 4 of those counts running consecutively, so that's 100+ years there. Prosecutors saying he does not deserve to see the light of day again.
I thought if I killed my dad, everyone would turn against me, so I made a selfish decision to kill them all.
Prosecutors cutting right to the core of the horrific crime caused by this clean-cut, well-dressed young man. CJ, or Colin Jeffrey Haynie, was just 16 years old in January of 2020 when he shot and killed his own mother and 3 of his siblings, one by one, in a horrific murder case.
This was not a single incident mass murder. This wasn't walking into a school or a McDonald's and just unloading your gun. This was planned, it was methodical, it was 4 separate incidences over a 5-hour period separated by 1 to 2 hours.
Prosecutors saying that's why Haynie doesn't deserve to see the light of day again.
This is not a rehabilitation case, it's a punishment deterrence case. Someone who murders 4 people, including 3 children that he knew and cared about, should never be free.
Haynie's attorney pleaded for mercy, playing a video of Haynie's graduation, saying he is a changed man. and all counts should be served concurrently, which would be just 25 years to life.
The juvenile offender has demonstrated maturity and rehabilitation sufficient to merit a chance at life beyond the prison.
In a surprising move, Haynie's own brother, who happened to not be home that day, said this all could have been avoided had his brother gotten help, and blamed his own dad, Colin, for not acting sooner.
He was robbed by not getting proper help, and while he might not blame Colin anymore for anything, I do. Because this could have been prevented. And this is something I've kept silent for too long about.
Haynie did speak, saying he hopes people can forgive his actions.
I can't ask for forgiveness for my crimes and mistakes. I want to make sure that people understand that my mistakes in my past are something that I will not do again. And I want you to know I have learned from what I've done.
As you can see there, Haynie's showing no sign of emotion at all as he talked about killing his only family members. Now, because he was a juvenile when this happened, he will remain in juvenile custody until he is 25 years old.
To my mind, the judge acted justly and reasonably in protecting the public from a kid who was clearly growing into a potentially dangerous man. The immediate aftermath of the shootings had revealed the small-town nature of Grantsville as the community came together in a candlelight vigil for the devastated family. Support reached further nationally and indeed internationally, as indicated by an online fundraiser for the father's medical costs and funeral expenses, with this fundraiser surpassing its goal of $100,000 within just a few days. Sometimes tragedy can bring out the best in people, and this was certainly no exception. Now we are left looking back over another mass killing that one of the surviving family members believed was preventable. But no one can guarantee that CJ getting some degree of support when his mother expressed concerns over his behavior would have changed what the troubled kid decided to do. In fact, none of the what-ifs will change anything now. And we are left to reflect on an entire close-knit family almost completely wiped out over the course of a single day. With multiple victims, the ripple effects would reach far and wide, with the remaining members of the Haiti family at the epicenter. Whether preventable or not, it was certainly senseless, and a Utah community is still coming to terms with an incident of wide-scale devastation and damage. I send love to all those still dealing with the fallout of a young man's rage. In particular, Colin and Danny Haiti, who were left to try to pick up the pieces of a family smashed apart. This video is of course dedicated to those family members that did not survive. Thank you for watching another episode of Murder of Crows. Please like, share and subscribe to help me grow the channel and also the community. With that said, I'm Steve. This mercenary feline is Samson, and we will see you when we see you.
Say that you're ready, but you won't like it. You say that